Welcome back to another episode of VHS Files presents the horror section. This podcast contains spoilers, adult content, and harsh language. Listener discretion is advised. Now your hosts, Josh and Jason. Enjoy the horror. What's your pleasure, sir?
I don't know. What is my pleasure?
You're going to find out by the end of this one.
Ooh, whoa. Hey, we're getting down and dirty already. We ain't even 30 seconds into this episode.
Hey, Jason, check out this puzzle box I got. They say if you
have
solve
such-
this puzzle, your pleasures will come to life.
Cool. What is it like? Is that what Victoria's Secret is?
Beats me.
You have a box and some super hot model pops out of it. That's my pleasure for this evening. But no.
No, more like demons that drag you to hell. How about that kind of thing?
Oh, okay. So you're like talking about like working at Home Depot or something.
Yeah.
That box, the big box store. Oh, well.
Welcome back to another edition of the horror section presented by the VHS Files. And tonight we're talking a movie from 1987 called Hellraiser. One of Jason's favorites.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I like Hellraiser. I mean, how many of these movies did it make? I think there's 9 sequels to this movie.
There's only 3 in my book, but
Yeah. Well, I actually, even part 4 is kind of iffy for me. I really just go with the 3. I considered it a true trilogy.
Well, that's what I'm sorry. I only think the first 3 are worthy of anything. So
yeah, because it's funny when you go out and buy this anywhere, you usually get either the first 2 or you get the first 3, and then after that, it's just goes. But yeah, they made 9 of these, so 10 total of Pinhead. Which
and
that's
I hear
not
we're
even
getting a remake.
Yes, but I hear it's from our director of this movie, Clive Barker, who wrote the original book, The Hellbound Heart, which is what it's all based off of. But I believe it was a court battle. He got the rights back to everything. So that's why he said he wants to just do it a better justice this time, which I think he did a pretty decent job for 1987, especially with effects and makeup for that time. I mean, there's some things about this movie that aren't fantastic, but it still holds a place in my little dark heart of horror. So, I even got a couple shirts. I couldn't find my Hellraiser shirt to wear for the episode, so I just threw on Halloween. Close enough. Halloween, Hellraiser, it all works.
There you go. It all works in the same thing.
Exactly.
Well, Clive Barker was known for his writing at the time, and Hellraiser was the first opportunity that he had to direct, and never directed anything before this. Jumped into a movie like Hellraiser, and I've got to say, like, it's very impressive that he pulled this movie off, being a first-time director.
Oh yeah, I mean, you think other people who have directed their first movies. This is a pretty good, well laid out movie. I mean, again, there's flaws because if we pick anything apart, we watch it however many times we've all watched Hellraiser. I mean, I know you and I have seen it. We can't even count. We start to pick it apart, but we just enjoy the nostalgia of it, or the first time watching it and getting to see quote unquote Pinhead, which that's just the fan name. If you're not familiar with the Hellraiser thing, he's actually never really called Pinhead, but I think they were end up referring to him as the priest later.
Well, Clive Barker made a penny go quite a ways here. He had a budget of $1 million to do this movie, and ended up doing a box office of. Did you do your research?
Of course. Hello, it's me, Jason. I'm the one who gives you all the characters' names that you forget.
I know. I count on you.
But it did 14.6 million.
That's a big chunk of change.
Pretty good for your first directorial debut, and you actually make a movie that makes a decent amount of money. I mean, that's 1987. 14 million is nothing to scoff at, but for a basically underground, based off of a book that probably a lot of people didn't know,
right?
And the movie made that. I call that a win. Yeah, definitely for Clive.
It was enough to spark however many sequels this movie has, which is quite a few of them.
I don't know if I have enough fingers and toes to count them.
Yeah,
I think
you
so.
probably have to use most of them in order to get them down. But this was released amongst the likes of some other horror movies. A couple we've actually 3 we've talked about already: Lost Boys, Monster Squad, Near Dark, and Fatal Attraction and The Curse came out around this time.
Fatal Attraction is kind of a horror movie. I mean, she cooks a bunny in a freaking pot on a stove.
I think
That's
yeah,
scary, man.
Technically, you probably would call that a thriller, but I would classify that as a horror movie myself. So
Yeah, don't piss off a lady. Don't cheat on your wife with a crazier woman than your wife. She's gonna probably try to kill you. So keep your dick in your pants, there, Michael Douglas.
But this movie, I would have to say, notorious for being one of the goriest movies to come out at this time, and probably still one of the goriest movies ever made.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's right up there. I mean, we had the Thing, which we already talked about. We talked about the gooey, nasty special effects of the monster and how the tentacles and the slimy.
Right.
We get a lot of that right here, and I did my homework on this, and the guy who did the special effects here, Bob Keane, he's been doing this a while. I mean, he did a great job here. He was uncredited for work on Star Wars 4 and 6.
Wow.
So now New Hope and Return of the Jedi, it was just small work I think he did, but he went on to do Waxwork, Nightbreed, Krull, Candyman, and one of my favorite werewolf movies, Dog Soldiers. And he was, I mean, some of it he was just a special, but some of this he was actually the special effects supervisor. I think he was on Dogs Soldiers. So
well, the thing is,
good work.
Like a movie like The Thing, it's very gruesome, very gory, but it's a different kind. You're talking about just deformity of the body and monsters that we really have no real blueprint of what they're supposed to look like. Therefore, it just looks foreign to us, This was a different kind for me, especially when I was a kid and saw this for the first time. Like this is, you've got Cronenberg, who also does the body horror stuff, but Clive Barker is more of a, sadomasochistic. It all involves the body and all this torture and stuff. And it's one of those movies that on the first viewing, it creeped me the hell out. And it's probably still in my memory bank, like one of the creepiest movies out there.
I think it's funny that you said sadomasochist because originally, I think he wanted to name the movie Hellbound Heart after his book, but I think the company said, no, it's the original, or had two working titles. It was Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave and What a Woman Will Do for a Good Fuck.
I didn't see that.
Gotta love Clive Barker. Yes. I don't see why the second one didn't make it onto the movie poster.
Right.
It's real catchy. We got fuck on there. Hellraiser's cool, but throw fuck in the name of a movie is going to, it probably could have made at least 17 million.
Maybe.
Instead of 14.
A couple more million.
But it was just funny you said that because that is actually, he's into that kind of lifestyle. I think he's an openly gay man. Mm-hmm. You could see it through the whole movie. The bondage with the chains, and then of course the hooks and all that other stuff. So
you're combining these two things with the human body and the torture aspect of it. And then there's with the human body comes sexuality because the naked body is just something sexual. It's one of those things. So when you try and blend it with this, it's something that leaves an imprint on your brain when you watch it and the way it's portrayed within this movie. Let's go ahead and play the trailer and start talking about it a little bit.
Ooh, from Stephen King.
Hellraiser. Beyond any terror you have imagined. A nightmare. No. Unlike anything you have witnessed. Is born. Because within these walls, the unholy is unleashed.
Man, are they leaving anything for you to watch the movie?
Hellraiser, a film by Clive Barker.
We'll tear your soul apart.
One of my favorite lines. I love that line.
Yeah.
Man, you went the whole trailer, dude. You must have liked the trailer. You let it go the whole way.
Yeah, I mean it's there's a lot of visual stuff there, but I think it actually holds a lot of stuff that's audibly good to listen to.
Yeah, that New World Pictures.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you would see that logo when you were like see a movie coming like on late night HBO? The day before you had the DirecTV guide, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, because I mean I'm going back because every time when I watched this for this episode, I was like, as soon as it came on, even though I'm watching Hellraiser, I literally have flashbacks in my head of these other movies that New World Pictures had done, and I was trying to remember. And one of them we've actually talked about was Heather's,
Mm-hmm.
but they did Elvira, Creep Show, your movie, The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren,
Damn right.
Warlock, House 1 and 2, and a bunch of other ones. So I was just like, as soon as that popped up, I totally forgot it was a New World Pictures production, and I was just like, you just automatically start thinking of all these other movies and trying to guess what it is.
This was one of those logos, and it's one of those that's synonymous with this movie for me. I think this movie burned such an imprint in my brain when I saw it that I couldn't help but associate that production company thing with this movie. So therefore, every time I saw that logo pop up, no matter what movie it was 1 in 10 chance that Hellraiser was about to come on.
Yeah, I think later you remember the old Dimension Films opening? That's where Hellraiser went, and it was usually that, the later Halloween sequels, or a Scream movie.
Yep.
You knew when that popped up, you were going to get probably one of those three on late night TV or something like that. But let's get in the movie.
I do want to talk about the score throughout this movie because the score is definitely a big part of it.
Oh, yeah. Chris Young did the score.
Very orchestral, very dark, and definitely sets the mood for the scenes that you get through this movie.
I did my research for him, and he was just saying that he did a lot of horror movies. A few of them recently. He did The Grudge and Sinister.
Oh, wow.
Which an article I read the other day says Sinister is rated as the scariest movie ever per the human response for when it watches Sinister.
Well,
I beg to differ, but
I mean, I will give Sinister that it does have a very dark tone and it has a very dark mood. And I won't say, I mean, you and me have talked about this before. It's very hard to watch something that will quote unquote scare me because
what's that?
I mean, that's the thing that kind of turns both me and you off about when we see these previews for new movies that come out and it's the scariest thing since blah, or you won't believe this movie. And I hate when trailers and all those, all that stuff
on the internet.
Tries to kind of beef up what this movie is. And, watching horror movies for as long as we have, it's hard to not go, this is not scary. I think it has aspects of being like, I can see myself going back and visiting Sinister every now and then because it is very dark. And I do think it's cool. pretty creepy movie. But I mean, that whole thought process of a movie is going to scare me to the point where I can't sleep at night has never been an issue for me.
You're going to pass out.
Yeah.
So that opening music sequence, some of the stuff when things happen throughout the movie, it's memorable. I mean, it's up there with the Halloween theme to me, or not maybe that high, but maybe like the theme from Phantasm or Exorcist or something. It fits into there somewhere. So,
well, I mean, this movie opens with your character of Frank, and he's getting this box, and I mean, there's a couple of things about this movie, and I think the reason it does as well as it does is because of the things that it shows. I mean, this puzzle box is a very iconic object from a horror movie. It's almost just like the sphere from Phantasm or the thing from Kroll. I don't know what they call it, but the thing that the guy throws.
They stick out. It's almost like Excalibur.
Yeah,
from King Arthur's stories. I mean,
it's right there with Conan's sword, and
all that stuff.
And you've got that combined with the Cenobites that you get later in the movie. So it already had something banking on the fact that you were roping them in with this puzzle box because it's so mysterious. Yeah. And they don't give you, well, I'm not going to say that because I thought they didn't give you a whole lot with this in the beginning. You get the surprise where he's solving the box and then the hooks get him. And I completely forgot that there's an entire sequence after Frank is mutilated where you see this room with the spinning pillar and all of the body parts on it. And that's when you get your first introduction to we call him Pinhead. I hate that we call him Pinhead, but
but Doug Bradley doesn't mind, you know.
yeah, I mean, but I forgot about the whole sequence here where he's taking the little pieces of
Piece
flesh
of his face.
and putting it together, and all of a sudden it comes together and it's a face, and it's like, this is where you get this. Okay, this is not going to be a light movie.
Yeah, well, you see Frank's body. You see intestines and other things laying around because we meet, like you said, Pinhead. We get the female Cenobite, which I believe her original name was Deep Throat, but they cut that. I think, what's the other one? Butterball and Chatterer. It's cool that you kind of get to see them. I mean, it's nothing really said. It's just kind of there, and you're like, okay, these weird things came in and played with this guy's flesh. It's left on the floor, and then they disappear.
Well, we're going to go on into the movie, and I mean, this happens to Frank, and we're not left with much than that. We don't even really get so much as a name from this guy, but he's who we're introduced to from the beginning. And then it cuts to this house that is a filth bucket.
Oh God, dude. I mean, Larry and Julia get there. Two of our kind of three main characters. They get there and they're walking around the house. I mean, we get that run through the house after the box thing, and you just see it's nasty, it's disgusting. But even when they get in the house and they start checking it all out, that part where Larry walks into the kitchen, see the maggots and the roaches on the food, you're like, oh God. And hey, about this movie and those, it's the first movie where they actually had to have a maggot wrangler.
Yeah.
So they had to, a guy had to go around and gather the maggots after the shots were done so they could use them again. That's pretty creepy.
Yeah. So we're introduced to Frank's brother here. I'm sure you've got his name because I don't.
Larry.
And Julia. And
that lady looks like a bitch from the first time you see her walk in the door.
If Pinhead and the gore leaves an impression on this movie, Julia leaves an impression on me as well.
She's the epitome of resting bitch face.
Yes. I mean, I could go down a whole kind of path about what I feel about Julia, but like, I don't understand her as this desired character in this movie. It just seems so weird to have her as the focus here. I don't know, but I mean,
I think he's kind of going for, she's dominant over Larry in a sense, but we find out later she's really the submissive.
Right.
In that lifestyle later in the movie. So I think that's kind of what it is.
You pick up on a sense of that kind of early on because she doesn't ever feel like she's comfortable around Larry. Like from the moment we see them, she doesn't feel like she's comfortable around him.
Well, we see that I think they moved it because they said that it was better than Brooklyn. So I think they moved there for a fresh start. So I think maybe they've had marital problems, which we find out they've been going on since before they were married. And, but I think that's what it is. Maybe they're there for a kind of, because that's kind of what Larry's talking about, you know, moving into the old homestead because it's his family's old house that his mom had and she died. And it's we find out full of religious artifacts everywhere. There's Jesus's and weird,
which adds another creep factor to all of this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of it everywhere and they're kind of weird, strange looking, you know? But you kind of see that there. And then we get upstairs and this is when we find out something's going on because there's a bed on the floor and Larry and Julie are there and they picks up this little statue of these people having sex.
Yeah.
And immediately he didn't even have to know anything. He went, Frank's been here.
Yeah. And I like that they established that like Larry and Frank don't have a very close relationship. Larry thinks very down upon Frank, and the whole reason that he isn't already living in this house is because they didn't want to sell it, or Frank didn't want to sell it, or something like that. So they don't really give us a clear understanding of why all this has happened and why they're having to. I mean, I know they say that they don't want to be in Brooklyn, but like it seems like why, if you don't like this house, then why is it even an option? Like, you know, it's one of those things that I kind of think about as an adult watching this now, but as a kid, I'm just watching a bunch of gory shit happen on screen.
And what's funny, as a kid, when she's thumbing through the Polaroids, I mean, as a kid, you don't know what the hell you're looking at. Because I think I was 10, 11 when I saw this movie. Frank's a kinky motherfucker.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. And then we find the picture. But Julia nonchalantly sticks it into her coat pocket. Yeah. Just that picture of him with some other chick, I think, later. And she rips that part out.
That's when you really start to get an idea of, well, you know.
Yes.
We talked about this movie being gory and being notorious for being gory. And this scene where they're moving into the house and they're in the attic and Larry cuts his hand, and the blood starts to soak into the floor. And
Oh, yes.
we learn that, we learn as we go on, but we start to see that something's going on in this room. And this regeneration of Frank is one of the grossest things I've ever seen. Like this scene in particular is what scarred me watching this movie for the first time. Like I could not believe what I was seeing on screen. And that's not like, it's amazing the way they do it. Like it looks phenomenal. And I think that's why it left such an impression on me, is because like it grossed me out, because I thought I was watching a person like regenerate.
It's very gooey and nasty, and I mean, there's some of those effects still hold up. Now you see a little bit of the whole reverse photography thing, and it's kind of like, you see it. But again, like The Thing, and even stuff like in The Fly, because there's some disgusting stuff in The Fly, because it's Cronenberg. It's just going to be gooey, and I think that's what's cool is here in the 80s. We didn't have just, like in the old Gothic days, it was just the skeleton in the corner or the zombie standing there, old black and white, which were still cool in there, the whole thing. But here in the 80s, we got gooey.
Oh,
everything was covered in slime. I mean, it was just, and I think that's what adds to the factor. I mean, even that part where it comes up and his brain forms and then it leans forward and you can hear it stab into the brain.
Yeah.
It burns into your mind for the rest of your life of what you just saw happen.
Absolutely. It is something that never leaves my mind from the moment I see it. And the movie doesn't do anything to make me feel any better moving along because it continues to just stay gross. And this movie did originally get an NC-17 rating, and they had to cut some stuff out of it.
Oh, I don't know why.
Honestly, I still am blown away that it got an R rating, because I mean, for 87, the ratings people were gouging movies like Friday the 13th for being too gory and all that. Like, I can't even imagine there being something 30% as gory in a Friday the 13th movie as 90% of the gore is in this movie.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, it's right up there.
And the MPAA ate up Friday the 13th, but this did not get nearly the attention.
Yeah, I mean, they could have made Friday the 13th, and they're usually like 1.5 hour movies. With all they cut out, they probably could have had like a 2.5 hour movie, but they're like, no, you have to cut all of this out. We can't have any of that. But we're going to let you have this regeneration scene and this guy walking around and sucking fluids out of bodies, and we're gonna let all that happen. But we find out it's her desire for Frank, because we get a flashback scene of her and Frank making out, having sex in the premarital bed of Larry and Julia on top of the wedding dress.
Yep.
And with the blood comes in there, we find that's what sparks this whole, between the blood and her lust for him, is what helps bring him back.
And I mean, this tells you something about Julia, because she does find Frank up in the attic. And this is one thing I thought was very silly about this movie is, I understand, like, if it's been in your family forever and whatnot, that you've been in every room in this house. But I mean, they're moving into a new house, and Larry never really seems to get up to the attic much. I just find it weird that Larry never goes into the attic, or they don't even really put a whole lot of stuff in the attic. There's another room across from theirs that seems to be full of stuff.
Yeah.
But not the attic.
Yeah, we don't know if it's theirs or his mom's stuff. I think there's 3 doors there. There's 3 rooms.
Right.
So there's not really even an attic. It's just a top floor.
And if it's just a third room that's there and not an attic, then that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Or maybe the third one goes in the middle, goes upward.
Because that's the only thing I can think is like, okay, he's not going into the attic because he just cannot be bothered to go up another flight of stairs. That's the only thing that I could think could justify not going into the attic. But Julia sure seems to go in there a lot.
Yeah. And then when she goes in there, she hears the heartbeat going, which stands out. And then, I mean, that first time, dude, I admit as a kid, I jumped.
Yeah.
I can remember distinctly when she could hear what's going on, and that thing starts crawling across the floor. And he calls her name.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as a kid, you don't know what it is, but when you hear it, you're like, oh, it's a human, obviously.
Yep.
It's not, and he calls her by Julia, and then she realized that it's this disfigured form of Frank that's not all together.
Yeah.
That's the best way. He's just a slimy, gooey mess. I don't even know what part of the body you would call that we see, because we later see muscle tissue, but I don't know what that is. That the fascia, the stuff that's under the
Yeah.
muscle?
I mean, I
don't
don't know. I mean, whatever it is looks great. I don't know if that's really what's underneath all of our flesh and blood and veins and all of that, but it's enough to freak me the hell out as a kid.
Yeah, but we find out that, she believes that it's Frank, and he tells her that just that little bit of blood got him that far.
Mm-hmm.
So he needs more. So, and she's scared at first. I mean, I'd be freaked out. I mean, I know she's had these lustful thoughts for Frank, and that's why he's there, but just the fact that, this creature is telling you, hey, you need to bring me more people so I become whole.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, we can go bang again, because that's basically what it's all about.
Right.
Because they just want to hook back up. So she's like, damn, well.
And that's what I mean about the nature of Julia here is she finds all of this out and she's on board. I mean, it takes her a minute to buy into it. You can tell she's flustered by what she's seeing, but if it means she can have that Frank D again, she's going to go get a hammer and knock some dudes out.
I mean, you're willing to kill people to get some freaking deep dicking from Frank over here. Maybe the guy should have just been a porn star or something.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we see her because she's laying in bed thinking about what's going on, and then when she does, she says, "I'm going to do it." And, but I want to get to one little thing in here, because we're talking about Clive Barker. Not only is he a writer, but he's an artist.
Mm-hmm.
He does artwork, stuff like that. There's this one sequence. It's right after this scene where it's Kirsty in a dream.
Yeah.
Does it not feel like he's just trying to be artful?
Oh,
there
yeah,
with
sure.
the whole feathers and the thing, and then you see the sheet with the blood coming through it, and you hear the baby cry. At first thought, because we found out earlier that Kirsty's, because the movers say, "Hey, is that your daughter?" Said, "Yeah." Well, she gets her mom's looks, and he says her mom's dead.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought with the baby, I was like, is this her having a dream sequence about her mom dying, either like she saw her mother die or get killed or something? But we later find out all of a sudden it pops up, which is another kind of jump scare. It's her dad's disfigured face.
Yeah.
It's all gooey and nasty. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one aspect of this movie that I think is kind of odd and doesn't really give you a very clear answer on. Is we're introduced to Kirsty. She's not with her dad. I mean, she's a grown person, so she probably has her own. But there's this whole exchange where she says that she got a room in town or something. Maybe it's now that they've moved out of the house or wherever they were at, like they decided to split ways. You can tell that, the dad, Larry, wants Kirsty to come like see the house and all this stuff.
Yeah,
like it's almost like he's not okay with the fact that she's flew the nest.
I feel there is a major history that we don't know of between her and Julia.
I was going to say, I feel like there's a major history between her and Frank.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. We definitely figured that out later, but I'm just because of that phone call, and even when, it's like, she's like, they don't like each other. Like she's the wicked stepmother type thing.
Yeah. And there's an exchange between Larry and Kirsty later when he's asking her to come over and, try and make friends and all of that. So I think it may just be the stepmother aspect of that I think is there, but it's obvious that there's a history between Kirsty and Frank as we go through this.
Well, there's a really cut scene where Kirsty did come to the house. She visited and she was leaving, and there's a half part of Frank on the stairs, and he goes, "Kirsty," and you're like, "Oh, whoa, that's kind of creepy." Like he knows the name, and it's like there's something in his voice is like, "Ooh, I get to see Kirsty again." So you're kind of like, "Okay, Uncle Frank."
Well, that's where like her dreams and visions that she has in this, and there's constantly a baby crying. Like it can be read a few different ways, It could be that her mother died when she was giving birth to her, and that's kind of what all that represents. I was starting to think, watching it this time, that something happened with Frank and Kirsty that led to a pregnancy that had to be either aborted or given away or something like that.
You never know, because there's that part where she first comes to the house and she's just kind of looking at the house. Like there's bad memories, and maybe that's why she wanted a room. She didn't want to be there with Julia, and there's just some haunting memories of this place because it was the family homestead. So she probably went there as a kid with the whole family and everything. So yeah, might be. That's a good. I never thought of that point. That's a good one, Josh.
I mean, I'm really just kind of making up my own little thing here, but it seems like they're alluding that could be a possibility. Like something like that may have happened between. That's why this family is so separated and kind of apart from each other, is because something did happen within the family that split them apart, and Frank might have been the cause of that. And that kind of leads to another part of this movie. I mean, like we've talked about already, this is very, it's gory, it's torturous, and it's very sexual. The
whole
thing
movie
about
is
it,
sexual, yeah.
yeah, the thing about it being sexual though is it's not one of those, like, at least for me watching it, it's not one of those that's like a sexy sexual.
No.
It is a dirty, perverted, like, it just feels nasty.
It's got that snuff film type feel, like that whole 8mm movie
Yeah.
with Nicolas Cage thing, or what was it? Nicolas Cage was in
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just that dirty, nasty underground, like the whole S&M bondage lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then they throw the gooiness of the horror and then death and demons.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even that opening scene where Frank grabs the box, you see how dirty and nasty and grimy his fingernails are when he's like, this is just going to be a dirty movie.
Now, I do like when movies, they put those details in front of you. Like they don't shy away. Like they will show you when people are dirty, like, and it's shown through the fact that they've got dirty, nasty fingers and stuff like that. Like, I like the way they portray that in movies a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, right here is we get Julie out helping Frank, picks up her first John, quote unquote, at the thing, brings him back to the house, and she's pretty handy with a hammer. Maybe she should have took up carpentry.
Yeah.
I think she could drive some nails pretty good. I mean, because she fucks up that guy's face.
Yeah, big time.
It's a good makeup shot too.
Yeah.
I mean, a nice disfigured jaw, lip area when she whacks him with a hammer.
That was one of the scenes that had to be cut down because they had shot angles of it to where the hammer was actually hitting the guy in the head, and they had to cut away from it to get away from that NC-17 rating. Also, like the kills that she does to feed Frank, like, we're supposed to be like one of the guys was supposed to be fully nude, and they didn't want that, so they had to go back and shoot it again with the guy clothed. So I guess, I mean, it's really like they could only be so far with the sexuality in this because the gore factor was so high.
Yeah, that's true. She knocks him out, and we get Frank crawl across the floor. And you see him push his fingers like into the guy's head to suck him dry.
Yeah.
Dude, how many times have you ever drank like a glass of chocolate milk and you get to the bottom of the cup and you're like, like that, trying to get that sound that he makes every time after I heard that. If I drink anything that you slurp with the straw, you're like, oh my God, that's Hellraiser noise. This is disgusting. Oh God. That noise. I mean, I know it's not probably the best Foley noise that ever for sucking someone dry out of their fluids so you can regenerate, but
Yeah.
it definitely left a mark with me because every time I hear anybody slurp with a straw or something, I automatically think of that noise because you
Right.
hear it like 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
Very prominently, you hear that. So,
And they don't really give us any kind of explanation as to like how this works for Frank. He just knows he needs blood, and it makes him stronger every time he gets more. It's one of the, it's like the question, how many licks does it take to get the center of a Tootsie Pop? Like how many dudes are you going to have to drain before you're back to where you need to be? Like, and I like that Julia gets to that point at some point in the movie. She's like, you told me I wouldn't have to do this much, like you start to see that she does have a little bit of a conscience, and she's not okay with doing this all the time. But just the fact that she's able to go along with it as many times as she does is scary enough. But
yeah, I just like I mean, we've talked about the makeup, or even the makeup, because after the first gooey Frank, we get the second one, and then where you could kind of see some of the veins from the forehead, into the,
and like the jawbone and the cheekbone and stuff.
The chest and all. I mean, that stuff is great. And then, I mean, it stands out. I mean, it's definitely memorable. But then we also get Frank for the first time mention the Cenobites.
Yeah.
So we find out that there's something up. I mean, for a first watch, you're thinking, well, maybe that's the people that were at the beginning of the movie that showed up.
Yeah. I've got a clip of Frank explaining the box and stuff, and I'd like to play that.
Cool.
Doors to the pleasures of heaven or hell. I didn't care which. I thought I'd gone to the limits. I hadn't. The Cenobites gave me an experience beyond the limits.
Where we actually get a
Pain
name
and
for the
pleasure.
Cenobites here.
Indivisible.
I love that pain, pleasure, indivisible.
And the sound effects here, I mean, with that like circusy music in the background too, and
They won't get me back. I'm going to live and you're going to help me, yes?
Yes. They'll never find us.
there you go. She lays it out. She's like, yep, we're gonna do this.
We're into this stuff. I'm into this kinky stuff, you know. Ugh.
But and
It-
that's the
ugh.
thing. Like when you get introduced to the fact that Julia and Frank have been having this affair, like it's not because Frank has charmed her. It's because Frank is dominating her,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like he's threatening her with a knife, but you can tell she's into it. And he, cuts the dress off of her, and that's when they, have their premarital, affair with on top of the wedding dress.
Yeah, I mean, not only she's obviously cheating on her soon-to-be husband, because Frank is there for the wedding, so this is like the day before or something,
Yeah.
and she just met Frank that
Mhm.
day, but I guess it's just this overbearing sexuality and his dominance to her, and her being, and I mean, I think she enjoyed it, because obviously we see with Larry, she don't get that.
Right.
So therefore, she's enjoying this of somebody else kind of telling her what to do. I mean, because he grabs her and forcefully kisses her that first time when
Mhm.
back a few scenes back. So he's basically taking over. He says, "Hey, I'm getting this, and this is what's going to happen, and you're going to do it." And then we later find, she will do anything for him, and he's like, anything,
Yeah.
That was back when he was still alive. So,
Mhm.
but I want to talk about the creepy guy at the pet store.
I honestly don't know what purpose this guy serves other than to be creepy.
That's what I've never figured out, because earlier in the movie, it's her and Steven, the
Mhm.
guy that she's kind of flirting with.
Yeah.
Which I later, I mean, it's kind of cool. I found it out that if you can flip a cigarette back and forth with your tongue, you can pick up women.
I thought that was so terrible.
I was just,
I don't think that would impress anyone.
I'm like, because Kirsty's pretty attractive to me. She's hot.
Yeah,
I've
I
always
mean,
thought she.
we
was,
haven't talked much about Kirsty. Like
Ashley Lawrence. That's
Yeah.
right, Ashley Lawrence.
she's adorable in this. She's gorgeous, and she fits the part of the daughter very well.
When they were walking earlier in the movie, the creepy guy is standing in a doorway,
Mhm.
watching them walk by, and Kirsty sees him.
Yeah.
Well, then we get her cut that she just got a new job at the pet store, and you kind of see him walk by. You're like, oh, it's that creepy guy again.
Mm-hmm.
But when she walks up and you're like, what is he doing? That part where he turns around with all those crickets on his hand
Yep.
and everything and then bites into him. Oh my God. And then they're all like crawling in his beard. I just don't really know. I mean, obviously he's something. Maybe he's tied into the story with Kirsty, but I mean, we later find out it's like Frank was meant to have the box.
Mhm.
So maybe it's something with his whole family is tied all together. And we have, demons or entities watching the whole family.
I don't know. They definitely don't do anything to try and give you any inkling of why this guy is following her, why he ends up being what he ends up being in the end of this movie. It is the biggest mystery of this movie for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, him eating the crickets is nasty. I mean, they're just going for everything gross they can give you in this.
Yeah. I mean, we got all the gooiness, and now we got eating bugs. We have maggots,
Mhm.
but we get to Julia has now killed, I think, the last guy he was supposedly needing, because I think this is the third one, isn't
Well,
it?
I think this is where she becomes very uncomfortable because she's like, you told me I wouldn't have to do much more than this. But that's the other thing too, is I don't know how Frank knows just how long it's going to take for it's the how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Like, how does he know when enough is going to be enough, or like he's now a being that's come back to life from feeding on people's blood. Like this might be something he has to do all the time, like some form of vampirism.
Vampire type. I do want to point out one little thing because we get this montage of all that stuff that's going on with her killing people. There's a shot of her. She's sitting on the couch with her legs at this end, and she has that freaking red hair pushed up to the top like a mohawk, like Gozer. And I even wrote here, the ultimate 80s bitch look.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the way she evolves in this movie is her hair kind of shows where she evolves
attitude.
Yeah, like
she's got attitude now. She's like, fuck you, Larry.
Well, since you mentioned Larry, I want to talk about Almost Famous.
Almost Famous.
I know that, dude.
I don't know them.
I know her.
Haven't you ever heard of that guy? That guy who was in that movie that was out last year?
The only person I could really, kind of associate with something that Andrew Robinson.
That's what I have as Almost Famous. I mean, I remember him before this. When I saw him in this, I remember because my mom loved Dirty Harry movies, and he was a bad guy in one of the Dirty Harry movies.
Yep, and he was in another. He was in was it the one with Jim Carrey? I think the Deadpool.
Oh yeah, the Deadpool. That's right. Yeah. He was in Pumpkinhead 2, Cobra, which maybe we'll talk about that movie one day.
Yeah, we will definitely be talking Cobra one day.
Yeah, and Child's Play 3 of all things.
Yeah, he was the demented barber in that. I remember him there.
But yeah, I mean, you look at everybody in these movies, their main focus that they had was they were in Hellraiser movies.
Yeah, I mean, Kirsty, the young lady who played Kirsty, that's what she's known for, is she's the Hellraiser girl.
Yeah, I mean, she was in Warlock 3, Creep Show 2019, so she was in a newer Creep Show movie. Or
I had heard that she's been doing some more recent stuff, and I think I heard that she may be coming back for Hellraiser. I'm not sure.
Ooh, is she gonna play Julia's character?
I have no idea. But I don't hold me to that. You can't don't fact check me, because I think I heard something about she's associated with the remake that's coming up, or reboot, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But I can't say for sure that that's a thing. I think I heard that though.
But check this out: the lady that plays Julia, Claire Higgins. I mean, she did Hellraiser 1 and 2, but she has been in as of recently, the Golden Compass, and she was in Ready Player One.
Really?
And I'm like, now I have to go back. I just watched Ready Player One. It was on TV today. Now I have to go back and find her character. I'm like, really? Julia's in this movie?
Anybody could be anybody in that movie. There's so much CG stuff,
But she's been in a few newer movies that are actually known. But but I would think, I definitely agree. Almost Famous, Andrew Robinson, Larry's character. I think he would be that under. I mean, well, you could always say Doug Bradley, because most people know Pinhead Doug Bradley.
But I mean, he kind of suffers from the same thing as Claire Higgins is. I mean, he's known for being Pinhead. I mean, I think if anybody saw Doug Bradley, like Doug Bradley is in Nightbreed, but he's not, like, you don't notice him because he doesn't have pins in his face, and he's
What's funny,
not pale white.
Yeah, what's funny is most of the Cenobites were both in Hellraiser 1 and 2 and Nightbreed. So it's like, hey, we're going to make this other movie over here. Why don't you come and do this one too? Since
I mean, we'll talk about Nightbreed probably here on the horror section, because I don't see that one being a movie of the week for us.
I like Nightbreed. That's a great movie, because we could talk about the was it the producer's cut, and then there's another cut, and then another cut, and totally different endings. That'd be a good.
Yep, I've got the Scream Factory edition that has both cuts on it. So I would like, we could do that one as like a feature. It could be like we could break down both versions and see what the differences are and stuff.
Yeah, we need to give Clive Barker some love. I mean, we love our John Carpenter, but we've been on the John Carpenter thing. So if y'all are listening, we've probably got some more out there popping up too. So I want some more Clive. We could do some Clive. I mean, he didn't do a lot of big ones, but I mean, he was involved in some big horror characters of our lives. I mean, Candyman, and then of course Pinhead, stuff like that. So definitely horror icons.
Yeah, but we talked earlier about Larry and Kirsty, and they have kind of a weird relationship, and we know that there's something going on between her and Julia, and we talked about him wanting to kind of make friends with her. Unfortunately, when they decide to go down that road, and she decides to try and go over and make friends with Julia, she finds out that Julia is not a very good person, which kind of reassures everything she's probably been feeling about her.
Yeah. Okay, this is the last guy because yeah, that's right. When Kirsty shows up, she sees Julia bringing a guy into the house. So this is supposed to be the last sacrifice type thing.
It's supposed to be, quote unquote. We'll get to
Quote
that here shortly.
unquote, yes.
But yeah, I mean, she blatantly sees Julia taking a man into their house, and it's like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? But I do like that they figure this out. I like Kirsty's reaction to what happens and finding out that Frank is a part of all of this. And that really kind of gives us more to cement that there was something that happened between the two of them, because naturally she'd be freaking out because of what she's looking at. Frank's not very attractive, probably wasn't very attractive in the first place, but now she knows he's back, and it's like, oh, well, this is where I'm going to have some problems.
Yeah, we're going to have some problems here. I want to mention one thing before we get this. There was a scene right before this that I think it was only in the movie for a disgusting factor. It's where Larry and Julie are making on the bed, and Frank comes out of the closet, and you think that he's going to stab Larry, but he just takes that freaking switchblade and slices open that rat.
Yes.
Over the top of the bed and then flips it out. I just had to mention that part before we get too far, because that's one of those parts that has stuck with me, because because I mean, him even cutting through the fake rat, it looks real.
Yeah, I mean,
and he flips it at her, and I'm like, ugh.
I mean, we've been talking about how gross this movie is. I mean, really, this movie is effects for me. It's what this movie is. What's best about this movie for me, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but yeah, I mean, this rat scene's gross. We're still not done with how gross this movie's gonna get.
Oh no, it's we're not even nowhere near. But we get the thing where she sees that Frank's quote unquote alive. He's still a bloody mess, basically, because now he's covered in at least his ribs are finally covered. He's covered in muscle tissue. Got a few.
Well, this
things.
is also when they've
got
dressed
ears
him
now.
They've dressed him in the suit at this point, or the shirt at least. And I really like that they put clothes on him, but the blood's still like soaking through them. And again, like just the gross factor of all of this.
It's like I said, all the gooiness and stuff. But she's fighting with Frank. Obviously, he's going to take pain easily because he has no exterior skin to protect him from her hitting him in the nerves. Because there was a part earlier where he was talking about his nerves were on fire. Because he was starting to feel and taste things. Yeah. But she hits him, and she finds the puzzle box on the floor.
Yep.
And obviously, Frank is scared about her touching that box, and she throws it out the damn window, and he freaks out. But because of that, it gives her the ability to run out of the house. She grabs the box and takes off.
Yeah.
And then I guess I never really got it when I first watched it, but she's just walking down the street. And I think it's more because she's still in shock. I mean, we see these pictures of her looking at Frank flashing into her head.
Yeah.
Like I said, what you were talking about, something happened with her and Frank. And I think it was so traumatic. That's what she's doing. She's kind of going to the state of almost like becoming catatonic.
Right. I mean, what she's seen combined with what she's probably got going through her head because of what happened between the two of them. Like, yeah. And it is a kind of jarring scene because you have her walking down the road. She passes out and she wakes up in a hospital.
She wakes up. She's in the hospital, which I still believe it is the hospital from part 2. But she almost kind of doesn't even, I guess because it was such a traumatic experience, she doesn't even know why she ran away, because the doctor tells her, well, you were clutching onto this like with basically a death grip. And she doesn't even know. Like she said, I don't have a clue. But, they said the cops are coming. They lock her in her room. And then, of course, the whole curiosity killed the cat. What does she start doing? Let's play with this little box thing. And then we find out what happens when you play with things you're not supposed to.
Right. And I've got a clip of it. Let's play it real quick.
All right. I love how he grabs her in the mouth with his finger.
The box. You opened it. We came. Oh no. It is a means to summon us.
Who are you?
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some. Angels to others.
It was a mistake. I didn't mean to help, but it was a mistake.
Oh.
the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
Love that neck thing on her.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Please wait.
No time for argument.
You've done this before, right?
Many, many times.
So yeah, I like that we get some explanation as to who the Cenobites are and what their purpose is a little bit there. Not much, really, but.
And not only that, we get some of the most memorable Pinhead lines ever through that whole section, and then one other section toward the end.
And that'll bring us to a bigger quote.
You're going to need a bigger quote.
I know you got a shitload of them, so I'll let you go first.
Well, I got them, but I have the tagline. I found a tagline.
All right.
For Hellraiser, and I'm trying to find it again. Okay, here we go. Which is kind of funny that the tagline is basically one of the quotes from the movie, but it says, demon to some, angels to others, what we just heard. It said, it will tear your soul apart.
Yep.
So I was like, okay.
That's a good tagline.
That's a good tag. There were some other ones, but I don't think those are actually taglines. Something's like Satan's coming, something like that. I was like, I don't remember ever seeing those, and I've seen many of these movie posters. I think I have the movie poster here, somewhere. But yeah, just that whole section right there. You got the box. You opened it. We came. No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Yep.
You know, and then one of my favorite lines is, "We will tear your soul apart."
Yep.
You know, I love that one. That's one of my favorite things. I mean, there's another Hellraiser movie that's got some really good ones in it too, but since we're doing this one, we'll stick with this. So what you got, Josh?
A lot of the stuff that you had, I wrote down, but I like at the end, which we're getting to when they actually get Frank and he says, "Jesus wept." And just the visual of him saying it with his face all splayed open with the books in it and stuff, like, oh God. It's a visual and an audio thing. It's like it just sticks with you. I opened the show with this one. What's your pleasure, sir? I like that one. And this is another one that kind of was cemented in this movie is Come to Daddy.
I was about to say that, where you just the whole Frank creepy Uncle Frank.
Kirsty, it's Uncle Frank. Come to Daddy. Like it's oh God, it's just so creepy, dude.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a horror movie fanatic and anybody ever says something about Hellraiser, you're going to quote at least 3 or more of these lines we just said. Oh, yeah. And they're still, I mean, I love that one. We have such sights to show you.
Yeah, that's one you use quite a bit. Like I hear that one. I hear you say that one a lot.
Oh yeah, when somebody says something about looking at something, we have such sights to show you. I do it all. That's part of the Jason. That's part of the Jasonism. It's in my rotation heavily.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I still love that scene from Hellraiser 3.
Which one?
When he's in the church and he crucifies himself on the thing. And he looks there and he goes, "I am the way."
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite Pinhead lines of all the movies. I love that shot. So, but yeah, I think we get, like I said, just that one section is pretty much most of the quotes to the whole movie.
I mean, this movie's definitely got some memorable horror movie quotes for sure. Stuff that we use quite often to this day. But in the scene we just watched, essentially Kirsty makes a deal with the Cenobites that, hey, somebody got away from you. I can bring him back to you. I can make a deal with you. I can bring you this one that escaped you, and you can let me go. And they, surprisingly enough, give her the opportunity to do that. And it almost seems like it's an ego thing because it's like, oh wait, somebody did get away from us. We got to get him back. Like it seems like they got to cover their ass. So they're like, oh yeah, take us to Frank and we'll let you go.
It's like, we got to go get him. Upper management is not going to be happy, guys.
Right.
We cannot lose another one. This can't be, the 200-year ago thing where we lost those 2 people. We cannot lose one this time. We could get fired.
Yeah, it's kind of like it kind of mimics the story of the Preacher comic book and the TV show and stuff. Like that's the thing with that is something gets away from heaven and someone let it get away.
Yeah.
and they have to go cover their ass to get it back before God finds out it's gone.
Gone.
And that's kind of what it echoed for me this time. It was like, oh, that's one thing I do want to bring up about this movie is it made Pinhead and the Cenobites iconic, but they're in this movie very, very little.
Oh yeah. It's well, if you think about it, even some of the other horror icons, I think we mentioned it in one at a time. We're talking about how long Freddy Krueger was in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Very minimal screen time,
Mhm.
but a memorable person, and that's what Pinhead and the Cenobites do here.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a kid, I knew all of the Cenobites' names
Mhm.
other than just Pinhead, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you read them in Fangoria, you're like, what's their name? Because we didn't have internet back then, so you're like digging through. You're like, oh, that's what their names are. Okay, they never said what their name was.
Mhm.
They get there, and what's his name? Steve shows up. Kirsty's gone. Door's locked.
Mhm.
And Pinhead and his buddies are now trying to go cover up the whole thing with Frank.
Well,
So-
now you've got Julia and Frank. They know that Kirsty knows, and she's going to do something and find them out. So, but Frank still, even though this was supposed to be the last kill Julia had to do for him, Frank still doesn't have skin.
yeah, I think he was playing her the whole entire time. He knew he had to have the bodies to get to where he was.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, he kept trying to want to kill Larry anyway.
Uh-huh.
I think he knew that he had to have skin.
Yeah.
And he was like, either way, I'm killing my brother because I got to have skin.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And to be honest with you, like you know it's going to happen from the time they start talking about what they're going to do, and it really, like, they've done a well enough job establishing the relationship between Kirsty and Larry in this movie that it's a little heartbreaking when you find out that they killed Larry and now Frank has his skin on.
yeah, because was it Julia's talking to Larry? Larry shows up and she's like, well, like, come upstairs or something. Let me show you something.
Uh-huh.
And then the next shot is her sitting there, and all you see is hands coming downstairs, and he's like pushing his fingers together, like he's
Mhm.
popping his knuckles and setting. You're like, did they just kill Larry?
Yes,
it's-
yes, they did.
And then you're like, oh boy. So I guess he's trying to, here, his fingers were not as long as mine or something. I gotta get that skin pushed down in here.
It's like when you're trying to put gloves on, you gotta put your fingers
you
between
gotta-
each other so you can get it on real good. And I like the shot where it shows, now we've got Andrew Robinson portraying Frank, but he turns to the camera and does that little thing where he moves his eye like it's like out of place.
Yeah, it's like he maybe had like a scar or something there, but the main part is right before that is Julia and Frank got what they want, because as soon as he's got skin, it's brown chicken brown cow time. They go straight for it, buddy. I mean, don't
Yep.
even waste the time. Like, hey, let's do this. That's why I freaking hooked you up. I want some more of that Frank loving.
He wants some more of that Julia Gulia. It was the 80s though. I mean, I when I watch 80s movies, sometimes now, like, I'll watch it going, did people really find this attractive back then? Like maybe at that time when we were 7 and 11 years old or whatever that is. And we're watching it, like, we don't find Julia attractive, but maybe back then, maybe she was what everybody was happy to see that movie about. We have no idea.
Because that's right after Kirsty had showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks she's talking to her dad,
Yeah.
but it's now Frank wearing dad skin. But the thing is this is a problem I had with this movie after watching it for years. Does she not see that he has skin peeled up around his hairline? His
Mhm.
ear has skin hanging from it, and it's bloody and gooey.
Yeah.
Kirsty doesn't even pay attention to that.
Yeah,
at all.
I
It's
notice it every fucking time I see him because
Yeah.
it's fucking gross.
Yeah, she's oblivious to it. But then you get the whole thing, sit down, like, oh, let me pop this back in the spot right here.
Mhm. And you remind me of a spot earlier when Frank is still like regenerating his body parts and everything, but like he's almost fully formed, but like he's sneaking around the house at one point and he's got the suit on, but he's still got like blood and goo dripping off of his
you can see
face
it.
as he's walking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Again, this is a gooey movie.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like I said, I mean, I thought The Thing had it because we just watched that, but I mean, I've watched Hellraiser many times, but when we're trying to do it for these episodes we do, you really pay even more attention.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I want to know how many gallons of this goo they went through for
probably
this.
a lot.
You're like, oh my God, this. I think I read something at one time. Didn't they have to go out? I think it's KY.
It might be.
I think I read a thing like they had to, I forgot how many cases or whatever KY they had to use. I don't remember it for taking for my notes here, but it's like I remember reading that like years ago about how much they had to go into town and buy it all up just so they could shoot the movie.
Yeah. But Kirsty's not stupid. She figures this out, and Frank gives himself away
Oh yeah,
because he pulls the come to daddy line.
and it's creepy.
Yeah.
Because it's her dad. I mean, it's not her dad, but it's her dad that she
Yep.
sees. But that whole come to daddy.
And I wonder here because, you know, they've got what they need now and Kirsty knows. So like, are they just trying to get her in so they can take care of her and be done? Or are they really trying to like recruit her for something? I feel like Frank is almost trying to recruit Kirsty for something.
I think he was just using Julia because, like, the scene right here where we get is where he goes. I mean, because Kirsty scratched the fuck out of his face, ripped his new Larry suit up.
Yeah.
And when he leans at her, like, is he really wanting to kill her? But because, I mean, he really leans into it when it's Julia and stabs her. Then he sucks her dry to have some more, I guess, maybe to heal his face or something.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, I thought this home after watching this several times. Obviously, like you said, there's something that he has for Kirsty.
Uh-huh.
And so therefore I think that was his goal, is once he knew that she was available and around, it was like, I'm going to use her to get where I need to. But my goal is Kirsty.
Yeah.
I want her for my own because of, you know, whatever happened in their past or whatever like that. He had a taste of something and he been after it the whole entire time. So
could be like, I read that whole scene with, you know, Julia's holding on to Kirsty, and I think he genuinely like maybe actually going for Kirsty, but when she does her, you know, bob and weave and gets out of the way and that knife goes into Julia, I think at that point he's just like, yeah, well, you really don't mean that much to me, so I'm just going to lean into this and get some more go-go juice from you and be done.
Is it like a Slurpee? Is that cherry flavored? Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's the thing. Cause like, even from like earlier in the movie when he's still not even nowhere near to being formed and he hears Kirsty and he's like, Kirsty. And it's like, he knows she's there. She's around, she's available. And I really think that almost kind of helps him focus. I mean, it was Julia's lust and want to help bring him back along with Larry's blood.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think his end game is that's what he wanted when he knew that she was available.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, if you could have Kirsty or Julia, which one would you take? Just on a visual aspect. So come on, man. But,
yeah, I mean, I think they leave a lot of that open to interpretation. Like there's a few different ways you can read it. I kind of hope that they, you know, if they do reboot this and kind of stick with the same storyline, I hope they still kind of leave that ambiguous and don't like feed it to you on a silver platter like they have started doing with movies.
Yeah, just let us think about it.
Which was ballsy in '87 because they were handing things to people on a platter then because people wanted to be pleased by what they were watching. I think that's another reason this movie might not have been as high a stature as something like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or something, is because it is very bleak and gross, and it doesn't invite everyone in like some of those movies does. Like, you got to be a special kind of fan to watch a movie like this.
Well, you think about it, Pinhead, the icon he is, came out in '87. They already had 7 Friday the 13th movies by this point.
Right.
So he had a lot of catching up to do anyway. Jason been around for a while. I had 2 or 3 Freddy movies, I think.
But every time I watch this now, like this was not one that I watched a lot, and for reasons we're still going to talk about. But like I forgot that there's this whole scene where Frank is stalking her through the house, and it's very like slasher movie style.
Oh yeah.
And my favorite part of the whole thing is when she goes into the room to hide from him, and we see what Julia's been doing with these bodies.
Oh yeah.
Another thing that kind of bothers me about this movie is how did you not smell what's going on in this house? But especially from the body that we see here, because Kirsty is sneaking around trying to stay out of Frank's sight, and this body falls over and like maggots spill all over her hand. And
it pours out of the guy, and his mouth is all disfigured, and it just like a pound of those things fall out, and in our shirt.
With the mouth being disfigured, it leads me to think it's the first victim, you know, but like there's no way someone didn't smell what was going on in there.
Can you smell? There's our wrestling reference. That's the only one you get for all of VHS Files.
Well, I don't know. Eric might bring up some
Eric
wrestling
does.
stuff.
Yes, I'm sorry, Eric. I know you like wrestling. Sorry, bro.
But I mean, but we find, Frank soon finds out that Kirsty came with an ace in the hole, because she made a deal with the Cenobites. And I like that they're confused when they show up that the body on the floor is Frank, like someone has already killed Frank before they could get there. And this is before she even knows that Frank or her dad is now Frank.
Yeah, this actually took place a little bit before where we're at now, because they said we want the person who did this.
And that's when she finds out that her dad is now Frank, is because she thinks that they're going to take her dad in place. And wait, it's not dad. It's Uncle Frank.
Yeah, because after the cat and mouse of them chasing each other around, and she gets him into the room, and that's when the floorboards and the lights start happening. But what's funny is Frank has seen this before, and he's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, he seems very confused by all of it, but it's happened to him before.
Yeah, I'm like, he's wanting to obviously kill Kirsty because she basically tricked him into being there and everything. And he goes to stab her, and the freaking chain comes around and grabs him by the hand. So watching this, you're like, hey, it's almost like Pinhead's the hero.
A little bit in this movie. I will go ahead and point. Well, actually, no. We'll have to talk about this for part 2 as well, because the things that go down with Pinhead in that movie are quite crazy.
Yeah. Oh, another line. The Doctor.
Yeah.
I love that line in that movie too. But yeah, he's kind of an anti-hero, sort of both, even though he kind of flips the script on Kirsty, because I think he lied to her. But,
right. I mean, that's where it throws all of this out, is like she held her into the bargain, but it seems as though that they're like, nope, you've seen us. That it's one of those things where it's like, you've seen us, we've got to take you back. There's no way we can let you go.
It's so memorable. Sticks in my head is all the chains with the hooks start coming out, and they're just tearing Frank/Larry's body apart, and its face is all stretched out. And this has got to be a mind fuck.
Oh yeah,
for Kirsty, because even though it's Frank, it still looks like her dad, and they're stretching his skin all out and everything. And he's licking. I love it when he licks his
right before he says Jesus wept. Yeah, he licks his lips, and it's just,
I found out that is an ad-lib line, because he really was supposed to say "fuck you," and that is an ad-lib line by the actor. He went, "Jesus wept."
Well,
that's a memorable fucking line right there.
Honestly, they were right to stick with that, because I don't think it would have. It definitely wouldn't have worked as well, in my opinion. But I really like that they flipped the wig on Kirsty here, and they're like, "Oh no, we're gonna take you back with us." I don't know how she really leans into figuring out that by doing more with the box will make them go away. Like, that's another thing they leave very ambiguous here, is we don't really know what Kirsty's doing to the box and why it's taking the Cenobites away.
Well, the thing is remember, she opened the box back at the hospital, and we really don't see the box other than it's seen when she's scared that she's running out because Deep Throat's chasing her up the stairs. She runs in the room, and now Julia's bodies went from the hallway to being pulled apart by chains in the middle of the bed, and she's holding the box.
Yeah.
But the box isn't, I believe it's in the open configuration.
So she's trying to close the box.
Yeah, because she realized I'll have to go back and double check, but I believe it's in the open configuration. And she's trying to shut it, but and I have to say something about this scene here when she grabs the box, because this is an iconic shot, period. I mean, it shows up in a lot of like horror movie documentaries and famous shots from horror movies, but that part where it's dark behind her and shit, and all you see is Pinhead come up just right behind her, dude. Love that shot.
And that's where we get your quote there.
We have such sights to show you.
I love that right there. But that's when but it was crazy, Pinhead's our number one guy here, right? I mean, he wasn't at that time, but he kind of is. But he's the first to go when she starts trying to figure out that the box can close. Gets him. Then I think she gets Deep Throat.
Yep.
And then that's when our buddy Steve, whatever, shows up at the house, and shit's fucking going nuts. It's like Amityville house here. Lights are flashing and everything like this. House is rocking and falling apart. I kind of wonder if they took some of that, because there's kind of a scene at the end of it. It reminds me of like an Amityville horror movie type shot. So
One thing I found interesting is they take care of Pinhead, Deep Throat, and Chatterer, but nothing happens to Butterball.
Well,
the roof just falls on him. He never really
guess,
like goes back into the box per se, or whatever it is that's happening to them.
Well, I guess he would, because by the end, when we'll get to the part that you were wanting to talk about, when she shuts the box, they're all supposed to go back.
Yeah. Well, they're all gone and the house is gone. So like it takes a lot of stuff with it when it goes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I want to talk about that shot. There's a shot right before she takes out Chatter of when she's walking backwards and he's sitting there with that veil.
Yeah.
That's a cool little artistic shot.
Yeah.
I like that. It's simple. It's just a really cool shot period for the whole movie.
Uh-huh.
And then it falls off in course, and then she takes him out. So,
but then you also, I mean, we haven't really talked about it much, and we'll go ahead and talk about it here. You get this monster, demon, scorpion thing, majig, whatever. I don't know what this is. We got it earlier in the hospital scene.
Yeah.
When Kirsty goes through the wall and this thing starts chasing her down the hall. Could have taken this whole monster out of this movie, in my opinion.
Yes. I've never been a fan. I mean, it scared me as a kid because you're a kid, but after you watch it into your teenage years and 20s and 30s, and now in my 40s, you're like, we really could have done without this whole we could have had more Pinhead here or something. Yeah. Even something maybe a little better. I don't know.
I can absolutely appreciate what they were trying to do with this.
Yeah.
But it is very ambitious. I mean, they're already kind of blowing our minds with the special effects in this movie. I don't feel like this was something that was necessary, and partly because it looks pretty cheesy now. I'm sure. I mean, it still has a very creepy factor to it, but it's one of those that was very ambitious, almost to the fact where they couldn't hide the lines for it, because in the hallway, when it's chasing Kirsty down that demonic hallway, you can see the dolly behind it with people pushing it down the hall.
Oh, definitely. It's so blatant. Like, you're like, dude, are they holding up a dolly and just pushing the monster down the hallway? Or is it more Cenobites and this thing's legs are broken and they're helping push it down the hallway? I was trying to make excuses for it to make it work, but no, it's
and I mean, again, like
bad shot.
This is a short movie, and if you cut that scene out, like if you just went straight to the Cenobites in the hospital, and then after the Cenobites are gone, the house is gone here, like that demon really is the worst aspect of this movie, because it makes no sense. It doesn't really tie into all the demons we've seen so far. And I mean, I don't know. It's definitely the worst part of this movie for me.
Yeah. Actually, I will agree and disagree, because we're not to the end of the movie yet about what you just said.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, she closes the box. Scorpion Dolly monster is now gone. Her and Stevie have now survived. They go out the door, but it's cool. They go out the door and the door slams behind them. And then we get, like I said, this whole Amityville thing. These lights come on and things are burning and everything. Now that's the part I never got over the years when I was younger watching. I never knew did the house burn down or they walked to an empty lot.
Yeah, they don't make that very clear. I'm assuming that the house just becomes engulfed within the box with everything else, but I don't know. Like, that's just me trying to put puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't turn into a whole poltergeist thing where the house gets sucked into the ground,
right?
Or Carrie where it gets sucked into the ground. It's like I've had that confusion. It's like, because you see a chair there on fire, like a dining room chair, and other stuff like these little piles of burning things, but I mean, you didn't realize how long it would take that house to burn to the ground, and this is just right after them running out. So I kind of wondered, did they walk down the road and it's just these things, because we got some homeless people walking around and they just have stuff burning for warmth or whatever. So I never figured that out. If somebody's listening to this and they know the real answer, let us know.
Yeah, clue us in.
Yeah, let us know, because we don't know everything here.
And we also don't know why this homeless guy's here again.
Yeah, he shows back, and like I said, she walks up, throws the box into the fire, and like you said, homeless guy, cricket man, decides to walk, and he walks right into the fire. It just catches himself on fire. And this is where I was just say I would agree but disagree with about the worst demon of the movie. when he burns and engulfs the fire and he turns to just this skeletal horse head, goat head thing with the wings, I would have to say that is the worst design.
It's a bad dissolve from like being on fire to the shot of it being whatever it is, and the skeletal look of it all. Like it's probably it probably is the cheapest effect they use in this.
Yeah, because you figured the other one had animatronics and stuff in it. Like this right here, they probably just were working with wires.
Yeah,
because I mean there was no internals or anything like that. But yeah, and then it flies off, and like I said, to me, it's pretty bad. I almost wonder if this was some like afterthought stuff as they were getting toward the end, and they needed to give you some kind of idea of why the creepy guy was following her around, because he's a demon. He was wanting the box, because later in the other movies we find out that the demons just want the box.
Right.
So I think that's what it was, and then we get the slow fade in of the circle fade in into the box sitting on the table again.
Yeah, exactly. The same exact table, same exact place as we saw it open with Frank. Now, I wanted to ask you about this because watching it now, especially in a high def version, it looks like the guy sitting there with the box, other than the one that says, "What's your pleasure?"
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the doctor from the hospital from earlier. Go back and watch it again and kind of focus on that guy.
The black guy, the doctor?
Yeah. Go back. If you didn't notice that before, go back and watch the end of it again and look at the doctor that's talking to Kirsty in the hospital, and then go to that scene. It looks like it's the doctor. And I think if they were going for that, I think that's pretty cool, because the doctor did see the box, and he knows there's something up with it. I mean, that's it for this movie. I don't know if I would have been happy if they would have stopped it from here and never given us any more Hellraiser movies, but they did give us 2 good sequels, in my opinion.
I love part 2 and 3.
I can't say much for anything past part 3 because I honestly have never seen any of those. Don't really have any interest in seeing them either.
Now, well, part 4, we actually get the history of how the box was made and what it was made for.
Yeah.
And the family was involved in it, and his whole family is basically cursed through time. So that's really what that whole movie is. And then we get into some weird, outlandish. Oh, it does. I mean, Pinhead shows up in some of them, but I don't think he's not even like a major part of them like he is in these 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you really think he wasn't much in this one. He's a little bit in 2, but he is really in part 3.
Yeah.
Then we get a lot of that. So, but.
Well, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this one.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
I mean, essentially, we could probably put all of our good stuff together on this one. I mean, the makeup effects, the look of the Cenobites is amazing. Puzzle box is amazing. The gore is something to behold in this movie. And it's really kind of like that to me, that's what you're watching this movie for, is the use of the practical effects and how gory they got with it. The iconic Cenobite demons that they've created here, and that iconic puzzle box is really all the stuff that works in this for me. Do you have anything other than that stuff?
That's pretty much sums it up. I mean, like this, because of this movie, we got another major horror icon in Pinhead. Which, I mean, he's such a horror icon. Like I said, that's not even his character's name. The fans gave him that name, and that's what he is synonymous with.
Right.
So that shows you that he was such a memorable character through these movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gore, everything about it. I like the storytelling. We don't get Clive Barker over telling, like giving us, like you were talking about, all this like exposition type stuff. I was like, you just you get the story, and that's it, and it just moves right along. I mean, there's a couple parts in it it's a little slow, but it's still a great movie. I love it.
So you got anything bad or ugly you want to point out?
Bad for me will be, there are aspects of some of the special effects, like the reverse effects, that don't really hold up. They're really cool, but compared to today, they don't hold up as much as they did back then. Ugly, Julia.
Not very PC, but
no, I mean just as a person, as a whole, as her soul and her persevere. period. Is she is just the, like I said, that she had the ultimate 80s bitch resting face down. And I'm not being derogatory to women in any way, but I mean, that's what she is going for, and that's what she's synonymous with, is that. So, and I think if your wife Jenny was on here, she would probably call her a bitch more than I would. So, but yeah, that's my ugly, Julia. So.
The bad here for me is the monster, the scorpion monster thing, and the doesn't need to be in the movie. Same thing with the homeless demon guy. Like, if you were to take the scorpion monster guy out of this and just had the homeless guy, like, I'd be more willing to accept. But the fact that we've got two different demons here that don't really serve much of a purpose other than to just be something else to blow your mind as far as all this story goes. That's really the stuff that doesn't work well for me, and I would say is bad. The ugly is and I know you hold this movie in a very high regard and you love this movie, but I don't really like this movie very much. I can absolutely get on board and respect that it developed iconic characters and like props and stuff like that with the box, and like it's definitely made its mark on film history and horror movies and stuff like that. I'm not denying that it is important in that way, but for me, this movie is just vulgar and gross, and I don't enjoy it when I watch it. It's just,
but that's the whole aspect of what people love it for, is this vulgar and gross.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I do go back to it from time to time just because of the iconic nature of this movie and what it brought to horror, but I ultimately am a film lover and respect it for those reasons, but don't really like the movie per se. It's not one that I enjoy watching when I do rewatch it. It's just that I'm crazy and like to rewatch horror movies and shit like that. But yeah, I mean, this is a very vulgar, dirty, gross movie to me, and that's really the ugliness for me, is that kind of stuff.
And Julia.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to my top kill.
Top kills.
I mean, I'm not happier than anything. Like, I'm more happy when I see Julia die in this movie than anybody else. I won't say it's the top kill of the movie, but it's my favorite kill of this movie, because you've seen her. We don't like her as a character, and then when Frank does her the way he does her, and then proceeds to just suck all the life out of her, I love that. I'm like, oh yeah, you're getting what you deserve, you bitch.
Oh yeah. Well, my top kill would be the obvious, is the Jesus wept scene.
Yeah.
I love that when because even if you watch it, I mean, not only, I mean, just because of what's going on in the iconic little line he says right there, but you see it as she's turning away, you see the body being ripped apart, mostly his head head is exploding, and then you can see the shoulder pulled this way and the other part of the torso, and you're like, oh, he died horribly. That is awesome. So that's my top kill.
Yeah. I mean,
there's anything with chains ripping you apart. I mean, with the way Frank dies at the beginning of the movie, and then Pinhead pieces his face back together on the floor. And that's pretty too, but I would go with that one. And I agree with you on the Julia one. Yeah. That bitch deserves to die.
That's going to do it for our discussion about Hellraiser. One day we will get to Hellraiser 2 and Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, and
Hellraiser 15.
No, I don't know if we'll.
No, I'm just kidding.
Far.
No, we'll probably do maybe the first 3, but we at least will do Hellraiser 2. We need to.
So, but that's another episode of the horror section for you guys. We hope you're enjoying these. We hope all the people that enjoy horror are enjoying us getting on and talking about it, and maybe not having that big, group discussion like we do on our movie of the week episodes. But me and Jason just kind of letting our love for horror movies go out a little bit. But we've had Eric on our Terrifier episode, which came out a little while back, and we know we are going into another horror section episode shortly here, and we're actually going to be bringing Eric back on, and we're talking John Carpenter's The Fog. So you can look forward to that one here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got 3 horror sections. I mean, it's been a while since we've done these, so we're hoping you guys are enjoying them. We enjoy them. And like I said, we got our buddy Eric coming in to actually talk with us on these episodes, so it's fun too. But we appreciate you guys listening.
That's
Keep it up.
Right.
And if you got any cool horror movies, once again, there may be some stuff that you guys want to hear me and Josh talk about, email us, Instagram, Twitter,
Yep.
Facebook, wherever. Let us know, and we might give it a watch.
Give us
and
the movies. I'd actually like to get something in here that me and you haven't seen and kind of give a review of it, or see if we can get Eric on and we can all pick a movie that we all want to see but have never seen, that kind of thing. So
we kind of did that with the Terrifier episode. That's not something me and Josh have watched over and over again. It was actually a new watch for both of us. So I hope you guys check out that episode, which should be dropping soon.
That's right. Until then, coming from the podcast that you should be subscribed to, the VHS Files, be kind, rewind.
Good night.
It's over.
We have such sights to show you.
Get the fuck out!
You've been listening to the VHS Files presents The Horror Section. We drop new episodes every Friday, so make sure you're subscribed and leave us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcast. Interact with us on all social media platforms at VHS Files Podcast. Email us your questions, comments, and movie suggestions at vhsfilespodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back. Yeah, if you're having trouble with your dialogue, just throw fuck in there. I don't mind.
Yeah, remember, fuck's versatile. It's a pronoun, it's a noun, it's an adjective, it's a verb. Just put it in the whole thing. Let's just call the movie Fuck.
Rob Zombie's new movie, Fuck.
I think all the gore is getting the Josh and I, but no, we love it though. But
Rob Zombie's sequel to Fuck, Fuckface.
Just be called Gooey Razor. I don't know, but yeah, this whole movie is gooey.
My mind just blanked. I don't know where I was going with that.
Or fuck you too.
I had a point I was going to make, and I cannot remember what the hell it was.